Can you hear it now? Y'all, I'm sitting here talking good and was on mute the whole time. This is welcome to my life. So I'm gonna see if somebody can confirm that they can hear, and then I'm gonna start over. Oh, now we can hear. Y'all, I was on mute. Can y'all believe? Y'all can believe it. Y'all know me long enough to know that that was probably what was going on, right? So today we're going to talk about using scripts. So I'm a therapist and I'm a parent, and I use scripts when I'm talking to my child, especially when there's a meltdown going on. Because why do I use scripts? Because for me, if I don't use scripts, I will go back to my default setting, which is yelling, right? Anybody who's talked to me or have heard me talk or been around me, you know that I am in recovery from yelling, which means that my default setting is to yell. And I will, and it's natural to me. And although I know the emotional impact of yelling, I know in my mind why I don't want to yell at my kids. Sometimes when my frustration level gets really high, or if I'm tired of saying the same thing over and over and over and over again, I'll start yelling. So think about this. Think about how familiar it has been for you where you've been dealing with a meltdown, you've been dealing with a tantrum, and things are just, no matter how calm you are, no matter how calm you're trying to be, we feel like the child is just pushing our buttons and they're just doing what they want to do. And so sometimes we will resort to the familiar thing, our default, which is to go back to yelling. And if you're anything like me, after it happens, I feel so shameful. I feel terrible, because I know better. I know better. And I don't want that to be the memories that my kids have, is that I'm always yelling. And so that's when I decided that I was going to start using scripts. So when I talk about using scripts, it's not, I don't want you to think that when I'm dealing with something, I pull out this piece of paper and say, hey, she's having a tantrum. Let me see what my script says for tantrum. It's not like that. But what I will tell you is I've always been a good student, right? And I've always been a good student. I learned well, and I knew how to learn and study things, right? And so that took me a long way in my educational journey. But also when I started doing training for racial play therapy, I realized it had me to create a totally different way of doing things than how I was doing it. And so what I would do is, before I would go into a play therapy session with a child, I would review some of the scripts. I review some of the wording. I review some of the things that I need to look at. Same thing when I was in school and having tests, I would review. And so I said, well, hey, why don't I use this in my parenting? Meaning, I would be able to identify the thing that I knew was a button pusher for me. And I would say, okay, when my child does this or when this happens, what is something that I can say that is intentional so that I don't have to yell, that I can practice, and so that I can make sure that I am being the parent that I want my kids to remember. And so I'm gonna talk about three reasons why I use scripts and why I feel like you should use scripts as well. So the first one is, like I said, it prevents me from yelling. For you, it may not be yelling. For you, it may be shutting down. For you, it may be snapping. For you, it may be being overwhelmed. But what scripts do is scripts act as a guide. And so when I feel myself about to lose it or about to yell, I go over the phrases that I practice. And it gives me something to say so that it won't harm the relationship and it won't have me feeling bad about myself afterwards. And so I tell people, if you know that your child is going to do something that is going to that's a button pusher for you, right? Being able to practice that, hey, it could be something as simple as, hey, you're upset. I see that you're upset, and I see that I need to calm down, so we're going to separate. You go to your room, I go to mine. Simple, to the point, scripted. Right. And when I say scripted, I'm not, like I said before, I'm not pulling the paper out, but it's me practicing these things. But also, it helps me stay calm. It helps me stay connected, and it helps me stay in control, especially when we're in the middle of a meltdown. Right. So instead of saying to my kid, like, how many times have I told you to do this? Or why you? a big one I used to say is, why you keep playing with me? Like, I'm just being honest, right? Why you keep playing? No one, now that I know, it has nothing to do with them, right? And I will find myself saying, hey, I see that you're having a hard time listening. Let's pause and let's take a breath together. Or, hey, I see you're having a hard time right now, and I'm having a hard time right now, so let's take a break. Those are just, and when I say scripted, it means that those are things that I've practiced saying. I can practice saying them calm, cool, and connected, so that it's not something that will, will cause us to go in the opposite side of the meltdown. And so the other reason the second reason I use scripts is because honestly, practice makes better. There's no such thing as perfect, but the more you practice, the more you get better at it. Think about like a person who is practicing for a stage play, and they have to continually go over their lines. Now, when it comes time to doing the play, sometimes the lines are not going to be verbatim, how they were written, but they will be able to navigate through those lines and take cues from the other person. Or like, when the athlete does something and they have to continuously practice, like you're practicing shooting the ball, but the reality is, every time you shoot the ball, every time an athlete shoots the ball, it's not going to be from the same exact spot. It's not going to be the same exact person defending them, but they're practicing that thing. And that is why I use scripts. That is why I practice scripts. That is why I have them, so that when there is a big thing that comes up, I already know how I'm going to respond and why I'm going to respond that way. And it's not being it's very smooth. And if I wasn't telling you this now, you probably would not even know that I use scripts. But I do. And so the other one is, scripts help me be able to be intentional. I can intentionally say the thing that I want to say without breaking down the relationship with my child, without hurting their feelings, and without making me feel bad on the other side. But also, what I'm modeling for them is, I'm modeling for them to be able to regulate themselves, and I'm teaching them how to be emotionally safe, right? You can use scripts in any aspect of your life. And we probably use them, but we just don't talk about it as using scripts. So think about, you have a tough conversation that has to come up, and let's say with a boss or with somebody else. And sometimes in your head, you'll go over, well, if they say that, I'm going to say this. If they say that, I'm going to say this. I'm going to make sure I stay calm. I'm going to make sure I stay cool. When they say this, I'm going to say that. That is a script. And so those are the things that I do, and how it helps me on my parenting journey. It's not something that I've researched, right, in terms of, well, oh, I do this with all the people, but it's something that I know works in my house. And I know that people that I work with, and parents that I encourage to use scripts, parents that I encourage to, well, what is something that you can say in that moment, and you just practice it? Because if not, if I'm being completely honest, I'll go, it's easy to go all the way left, right? It's easy to say the thing or get upset, or it's easy to just go off. But if you already know that these things are going to be a trigger for you, then we can create the ways that we're going to say them and how we're going to do it. And so the three ways that we talked about how scripts help me and how I use them is, one, it prevents me from yelling. And you may not be a yeller. You may be one that shuts down, or you snap, or you get overwhelmed, which is okay. But it helps you from not going back to your default setting. The second thing is, it helps you practice, because practice makes better. Right? The more we practice something, the more comfortable we get. And honestly, you may not even have to use scripts after a while, or you may not have to review them after a while. And scripts help us be more intentional. So I would think about thinking about scripts and how I've asked parents to use scripts before. I can think about when parents are struggling, when kids are struggling, and they're saying things that, like, one of the big ones that I get a lot is when kids would say, well, I don't want to live anymore, or you don't love me anymore, and I know you love my sister more than you love me, and I know you don't want me here, and I just wish I would die. And not in terms of, these are kids who are being suicidal, who are wanting to end their lives. But as a parent, can you imagine that you are here and you are trying to support your kid, and they say, you don't love me and I just wish I would die? We are crushed and we are heartbroken. And so when those situations occur, that is I would say, one of the most common times where parents and I talk about, what script can we use? What is it that you would like to say in that moment, and being able to practice it? Because if you don't practice it, emotion is going to take over, and we're going to go and we're going to become the fixer, and we're going to become we're going to, no, no, that's not true, and that's, mama loves you and all those things. And sometimes that could be more harmful, only because if a child is telling you I feel one thing, and we're invalidating their feelings by saying no, you don't feel that way, or no, that's not true. And so that's when you will use a script and say, hey, it sounds like you are feeling disappointed in this thing, and it makes you feel like mom doesn't love you. I want you to know that I love you and I always love you. Right? It's not telling them, no, 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 you're lying, but it's telling them, hey, I want to validate what you feel, but I also want you to know that I do love you and I'm here. And so those are things. So if you thought this was helpful, please drop a comment and let me know. If there is a certain situation that comes up for you that you can say, hey, you know what, Megan, I think I need a script for this specifically. Let me know, and we can definitely and I can see because I can see what I have. I'm gonna say that. See what I have in the archive, because I create these things for the families that I work with. But I never put them out there in the world. So if there's something specific, I definitely could, we could talk about that. So thank you so much. And thank you for attending the Lunchtime Live. And I'm going to have to delete that first part because we were mute. All right. Y'all have a great rest of your day.